Welcome to NBA Jam Tatman QC on Fire Edition. Boom shakalaka!
Happy little games. Hello my friends. Hopefully you all watched my History of Turbo Outrun video, and yes, I did do a history of the original game, but that was 6 years ago and only 12 minutes in length. In that time, my research and editing skills have all improved, yet the same bad jokes remain the same. With that said, I'm kind of doing things bass-ackwards in terms of the order because I've gone back and completely remade the original Outrun video, which is what you are about to experience right now. A lot of new information has been uncovered on the making of as well as new fan projects. I hope you enjoy this video. For me personally, the quintessential arcade racer from the 1980s that still puts a smile on my face and that same warm feeling I used to get when watching Cinemax late at night. The name of the game is Outrun, and it's basically a rite of passage for any retro gamer from that era. The arcade cabinet came in a few different flavors, and with the market penetration it utilized as well as the arcade 1-up versions that were recently released, I'm sure most of you have actually played it. The cabinet itself was a thing of beauty with a standard upright as well as the ultra deluxe moving cabinet that utilized hydraulics, which was a definite treat. This is really one of those games, similar to Raston, that is the perfect package as far as gameplay, graphics, and music go. Who really created the arcade game Outrun? What areas were scouted as possible locations for this game? So grab your girlfriend, buckle up, and get ready to drive really fast because this is the history of Outrun. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sega were the kings of the arcades in the 1980s and into the early 1990s. The company got its start as American Standard Games in the 1940s in Hawaii, starting out selling coin-operated games such as slot machines. In 1951, the Transportation of Gambling Devices Act outlawed slot machines in the U.S., so they set up a few different coin-operated companies to try something different. They formed Service Games, or Sega for short, in Japan in the early 1960s, in which they developed coin-operated games such as 1962's Punching Bag, 1966's Periscope, and 1967's Rifleman. In the early 1970s, they entered the arcade video game market and even acquired some licensed titles such as the racing game Fonz, and of course, 1982's Star Trek and 1983's Buck Rogers. However, when it came to standard four-wheel racing games, the best of the best at that time was Namco's pole position. Every arcade or bowling alley you went to typically had one on display, and it was one of the biggest titles for the company next to Pac-Man. Sega had released a number of games in the 70s and early 80s, but what really grabbed arcade goers' attention was Hang On from 1985. This title was designed by Yu Suzuki, who was a huge motorcycle fan and wanted to create an arcade game that gave users the experience of riding an actual motorized vehicle. The game did not feature any traditional controls as the movement of your on-screen character was dictated by the movement you made with your body on the motorcycle cabinet. Mr. Suzuki has stated he would ride the prototype for hours and hours every day just to make sure it had a proper feel. This began the Taiken trend, which is the use of motion-controlled hydraulic simulation in arcade cabinets. The game also featured smooth scrolling sprites, commonly known as the Super Scalar technology, and excellent sound. The company would build upon this formula with the game Enduro Racer and Space Harrier, which both utilized Taiken technology. By the way, Taiken translates roughly into body sensation. When it comes to the creation of everyone's favorite arcade racer, there have been a couple of different conflicting stories. What is known for sure is that the higher-ups at Sega wanted to make a driving game utilizing not sports cars but F1 racers as seen in these preliminary sketches. They were happy with the success of Hang On, but it wasn't big enough to overtake pole position as far as iconic racing games go. The company knew they could make a better racing game that was inspired by pole position but also do it a whole lot better. The code name for this game was Dead Heat, and in the early stages of development, you could also race head-to-head with either a computer opponent or a second player. Even early on, road inclines and branching paths were going to be a part of the game as shown here in this concept art. However, by late 1985, the design had shifted from F1 to sports cars, with the multiplayer feature having been dropped completely due to budgetary reasons. Mr. Suzuki focused on making the tracks as interesting as possible with the game now codenamed Spark Rally. From the design documents, it also looks like your car is a standard Porsche, with the legendary Ferrari not yet having entered the picture. The final design documentation, dated June 1986 with the name of Outrun, is credited to Yoji Ishii, Ai Yutani, and Motoshige Hokoyama, but Mr. Ishii has stated that the core development of the game was left up to Suzuki himself. As a matter of fact, it was Suzuki who had seen the movie Cannonball Run, which was a checkpoint rally racer from New York to Los Angeles, and featured a lot of stars and a lot of cars, and in my opinion, still holds up 45 years later. The movie featured a lot of racing action and comedy, so if you haven't seen it, you might want to have a look. Mr. Suzuki was inspired by this movie and felt it would be perfect for the driving game he was developing. He wanted a virtual tour of the USA, only in video game form, and wanted to drive across the good old USA with a camera filming everything for reference. The president of Sega, Hayao Nakayami, said absolutely no way, but offered to send Suzuki and his team to Europe instead, considering it would be much more safer. Mr. Suzuki has also stated that the European trip worked a lot better because his initial tour of the USA was just along the western seaboard, specifically California, where the scenery really doesn't change that much. The team started in Frankfurt and ended up in Monaco with a number of stops, filming everything along the way. According to Mr. Suzuki, I felt that I should first actually follow such a course myself, collecting information with a video camera, a still camera, and other equipment. I started out in Frankfurt where I rented a car and I installed a video camera on the car. I drove around Monaco and Monte Carlo along the mountain roads of Switzerland, stopping in hotels in Milan, Venice, and Rome, collecting data for a fortnight. This would explain why the game really doesn't look like you are in the USA. The scenery features rows upon rows of windmills and beautiful fields of flowers, which would be a rarity here in the States. In the development document that was on display at CDC 2019 in Japan, you can see a timeline with some extraordinarily rare pieces of concept art from the game. Dated July 1985, when it was still known as Dead Heat, you can see the concept for the two cabinets that would be linked together. December 1985, when the game was officially changed to Spark Rally, the cars also underwent a change and looks like something out of Sega Rally. And then finally, on June 1986, it was officially changed to Outrun. Something else that accompanied this document were some of the photos that Mr. Suzuki and his team had taken along the way that helped inspire the look and feel of Outrun. According to Mr. Suzuki, I was only able to put around half of the things I wanted to do in the first Outrun. Because of budget and development time, some of the content I had planned had to be cut. This included 8 individual characters and various events at each checkpoint, which would have made the player experience a story similar like the Cannonball Run films. I also wanted to include a choice of supercars to drive so players can enjoy differences in car performance. The car Mr. Suzuki and Mr. Ishii rented was a BMW, which you can see here with the main man himself behind the wheel. The trip ended in Monaco, which unintentionally helped inspire one iconic fixture in the Outrun franchise. This is where he came across the Ferrari. Naturally, I was yearning for Ferraris. Above all, the most talked about car of the time was the 12-cylinder Ferrari Testarossa. The first time I saw the car was in Monaco, and I was really moved by its beauty. I thought, there is no choice, this is the only one. After heading back to Sega HQ, but before programming could proceed, Mr. Suzuki wanted to do a bit more research, specifically on the Ferrari, which is where they ran into their very first problem. Only a tiny number of Testarossas have been brought into Japan, so we had some trouble finding an owner to help us with collecting car data. Eventually, 5 of us squeezed into a small car and drove for 3 hours to see a Testarossa. We took photos of it from every side at 5-degree intervals and also recorded the sound of the engine. Mr. Suzuki wanted Outrun to be more of an experience than his previous effort on Hang-On. He was not a fan of cars blowing up upon collision, so he deliberately omitted this concept with your car spinning out of control or flipping head over heels, ejecting you and your girlfriend. Also, you could actually bump into other cars and it wouldn't be a catastrophic failure. Mr. Suzuki wanted the player to get a feel for the controls and enjoy the traffic-free road at least for a few seconds at the very beginning. There is nothing worse than inserting your money and crashing in the very first moments of the game. Mr. Suzuki simulated real features for the virtual Ferrari such as torque, tire engineering, and horsepower. He also included AI assistance, which is essentially the drift technique. The roads you race across are not just flat pieces of barren wasteland, but magnificent lush scenery utilizing bright pastel colors that resonate with your senses. Yes, you are racing against a virtual clock, but you were also racing to see what the next stage looked like. The large roadside objects that ran on the Sega Outrun board, which utilized silky, smooth scaling technology, was a thing of beauty, and it still looks fantastic almost 40 years later. The difficulty was pitch perfect, where you always wanted to try just one more time. Speaking of the Ferrari Testarossa, even though it is based on the real car and utilizes the actual Ferrari license, the model in the game is convertible, and they did not make one like this in real life. This is similar to the convertible Ferrari F40 in Turbo Outrun, which again is not based on a real-world model. The level design and emphasis on scenery with bright pastel colors was a deliberate choice by Mr. Suzuki. He set out to make a game where you can enjoy the huge, sprawling, changing scenery while driving and get a nice sensation rather than a stoic style of play. The pastel colors and flowing flowered landscape appears so surreal that you could almost smell the fresh flowers. To encompass the beautiful graphics and finely tuned gameplay is the music and sound effects. As previously mentioned, a real Ferrari Testarossa was used as the basis for the engine and tires, but the music is what brings it all together. The music was composed by Hiroshi Kawaguchi. Upon first starting up the game, you'll notice that you have your choice of 3 different radio stations to listen to fully complete your driving experience. Initially, just a radio was shown on the screen, but Mr. Suzuki suggested that they add a hand, which turned out rather well. He also requested the kind of tunes that were needed, explaining that he wanted 8-beat rock rhythms at a tempo of 150 beats per minute. The final 3 songs that were chosen were iconic and are instantly recognizable to anyone who hears it. These tunes include Passing Breeze, Magical Sound Shower, and Splash Wave. Each of these tracks lasts about 6 minutes, or just about the length of the actual game from start to finish. Here are some of the photographs that were taken along with Mr. Ishii and Mr. Suzuki's route across Europe dated April 1986. Development time in total was said to be between 8 and 10 months for this title, with a total of 4 programmers, 5 graphic designers, and 1 sound creator. Mr. Ishii spoke with the website Time Extension and recounted his time with Mr. Suzuki on their road trip. He remembers driving 200 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn in Germany and being amazed by how fast the car was going. He also has various videotapes from the trip, which unfortunately he has nothing to play them on. The fantastic Outrun website, reassembler.blogspot.com, have gone through the ROMs and source code and noticed a number of different options. These include an unused prototype track of Coconut Beach with a different layout as seen here. It was also discovered that the traffic was going to run both ways, but that was cut. There was also a used Suzuki Easter egg since there are no credits listed in the arcade game due to poaching from other companies. There were also some alternate graphics, such as the start banner at the start of the game, as well as motorcycle sprites which clearly did not make it in the game. There is also an extra sprite animation after you win, in which you are holding the trophy and falling over after your girlfriend gives you a kiss. An extra unused sprite is shown identifying the magic lamp that is being held up. If you wait 15 seconds after starting the game before hitting the accelerator, the flag waver will eventually get tired and motion you to move forward, and then finally turning away in disgust. Outrun was released by Sega into arcades in late 1986. This was a worldwide phenomenon, and it didn't matter whether you were in Pizza Hut, Aladdin's Castle, or a bowling alley near you, more than likely you were going to see some form of the Outrun cabinet. This one came in 4 flavors, including, but not limited to, the standard upright and the standard deluxe moving cabinet, which was a thing of beauty. The board that powers the system was known as the Outrun hardware, which was similar to the System 16, but with the addition of a second 68,000 processor and separate video board. The board also powered Turbo Outrun. After selecting your music, away you go as the smooth scaling of the sprites blow past you while you get a feel for the perfectly fine-tuned controls. You have a gear shift as well as an accelerator pedal. The cabinets are equipped with force feedback motors which will shake the steering wheel as you turn or when you crash. There is a nifty little trick that's called the Outrun gear rattling technique, which I learned about when researching this video. It's either a bug or a feature in the code that allows players to maintain speeds of 294 kilometers per hour while driving off-road. Pretty cool indeed. As previously mentioned, the game has different paths or forks in the road at the end of each stage. Each branch leads to a different area. In actuality, a single game from start to finish is only 5 stages, but with all of the various paths you can take, there are a total of 15 different tracks. You have courses A, B, C, D, and E, and with each course comes a different ending, which really helps the replay value. The graphics are breathtaking with their giant roadside objects and even tunnels you can drive through made up of various columns. Each stage is unique and it is such a pleasure to play. I really do get the warm fuzzies whenever I play this title. As previously stated, this game is the perfect blend from the graphics to the music to the playability. Even when the game is over and you're entering your name on the high score table, the song entitled Last Wave relaxes you as you stare out into the sunset with sounds of oncoming waves. Utterly fantastic. Here are all the endings in order.
Congratulations! Congratulations!
Outrun was a huge worldwide success for Sega, selling over 40,000 cabinets worldwide, equaling almost 300 million adjusted for inflation. There were a few pieces of merchandise released for Outrun over the years, including shirts, toys, wallets, ties, mouse pads, model kits, and even 2 Tiger LCDs. One is the standard handheld and the other is a tabletop version which looks like the front half of your Ferrari Testarossa. To celebrate the 20th anniversary of Outrun, an 11 CD box set of the various music tracks from a number of different Outrun games was released in Japan. A very rare VHS and Laserdisc were released which features a playthrough of both Turbo Outrun and Super Monaco GP. What is so cool about this is that the band SST performed songs from Outrun live on stage at the end of the video. There is also a separate video that showcases a playthrough of Outrun and its various crashes. An extremely cool artifact is the gold Testarossa, which was a reward to Sega distributors who had the highest sales performance. It is believed that there are only 100 of these that were made, so these are extremely rare. And while it's not officially licensed, I came across a cool, custom-made LEGO Outrun set. A number of soundtracks have also been released over the years, including those on vinyl, cassette, and CD. Outrun has also graced the silver screen in the 1985 Tom Hanks movie Big, where it is seen on the boardwalk next to Zoltar. The game received a number of follow-ups which I will cover each individual game at a later date, as there simply isn't enough space to cover everything at once. Now I've seen some cool hacks in my day, but one of the coolest I have ever seen was the Playmates 1985 Fun to Drive dashboard driving game, but this has been converted to run actual driving games such as Outrun. It's running an Android emulator with fully playable steering, which is absolutely amazing. Another hack was done for the Tommy turn-in dashboard that actually runs the Outrun arcade game. And finally, an extremely cool hack worth mentioning is Garnet Hertz's video game concept car, which combines an Outrun arcade cabinet into a real-world electric vehicle that actually drives. Outrun has had a number of cameos in Sega properties over the years, including a fully playable arcade game within Shenmue 1 and 2. The deluxe Sega Outrun machine can be a selectable racer in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. A human form of Outrun along with other select Sega properties can be picked in the RPG 404 game reset. Magical Sound Shower is a level in the game Taiko no Tatsujin. An Outrun level can be selected in Sambo de Amigo version 2000. Outrun music can be found in the 3D version of Power Drift for the 3DS. And it's also possible to unlock Flagman in this version of the game. And finally, you can unlock the actual Outrun cabinet in the game 2 Point Hospital. Before moving on to the conversions, let me make special mention of some noteworthy additions to the Outrun series of games. Cannonball offers a number of enhancements over the original Outrun arcade game, including 60 frames per second gameplay, whereas the original ran at only 30. True widescreen play mode, which increases the screen by about 25%, forced feedback controls, custom tracks including support from Layout, which is a track editor for Outrun, new game modes such as continuous and trial modes as well. This is a fantastic enhancement, so I will leave a link to Cannonball in the description down below. The Amiga version, which I will get to in just a bit, didn't turn out too well, so there has been a groundswell of requests over the years for someone to tackle this project and give Amiga owners a version they can be proud of. This initial release requires an Amiga 1200 with a small amount of fast RAM, but the intention is to produce a version which will run on a stock A1200. As you can see from the quick prototype footage, it's looking really good, and the team's leader, Thomas Jensen, hopes to release it this October. Another homebrew release for the Amiga is being worked on, entitled Outrun Arcade by Reassembler. This looks fantastic as well, but also uses an expanded Amiga 1200. From what I can gather, it is looking really good, although the sound isn't done yet. There is no timetable yet, but so far, so good. Arcade 1UP also made a miniature version of the Outrun cabinet. This includes steering wheel and foot pedal as well. The game received a wide variety of conversions, including one that utilized the Sega Scope 3D glasses for the Sega Master System.
インターナショナルビッグゲームセガアウトランマーク3ソフトで新登場15コース5つのゴールスリルあふれるアップダウンコース選べるゲームサウンドセガアウトランゲームリーダー
We might as well start with the first actual arcade port of the game, which is for the Master System. Right off the bat, let me mention that I've never actually used the Sega Scope 3D because everything I'm using is done through emulation. With that being said, the game runs a bit on the slow side and everything is choppy. I would assume this has to do with pushing around twice as many sprites due to the 3D nature of the game. I have read reviews online that people have said that the 3D effect on real hardware worked out rather well, but for me personally it just doesn't feel that great. The music is decent, but it does control perfectly fine. Sticking with the Master System, let's go ahead and look at the stock version, which turned out a whole lot better. While not extremely smooth, the gameplay is fast and it does have pretty good music. The controls are about on par with the 3D version, so overall it's pretty good. The game also makes use of the FM sound module, which makes everything sound a whole lot better. US Gold and Probe Software were in charge of the majority of the home computer conversions in Europe, and I must say they didn't turn out that well. As a matter of fact, since most computers could not do an adequate job with the arcade game's iconic tunes, a cassette tape was provided with a game that included all of the songs from the actual arcade game. The first on the list is the Amstrad version with a frame rate so slow you could practically go and make yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in between the frames. At certain points, the frame rate drops to just about 3 frames per second. This was an ongoing argument with the developer and Probe, as Probe wanted more speed, but the developer wanted better graphics. While everything is there as far as the courses go with large sprites and bright, vivid colors, the gameplay is atrocious. Also, there is absolutely no sound, so yes, it is silent but deadly. The Speccy port, despite its lack of color, actually didn't turn out half bad. The frame rate is a bit better than the Amstrad, and this time we actually get some pretty good music. It still doesn't control all that well, but the sprites are large and detailed and look like the arcade game. MSX received two different versions, with the first one being for the original MSX computer. At first glance, you would think this is a pure Speccy port, but that's not the case. This apparently shares some assets with the Spectrum, but the controls are not one of them. This controls like a petrified turd. Apparently, even if you do a perfect run on this game, the time will still run out and the game is over. A version was released for the MSX2, which I thought turned out pretty good. The graphics are nice and colorful and actually remind me of the Master System version. The scrolling is fairly smooth and we do have some decent tunes playing in the background. The big improvement over the original MSX version though is the playability, as this one is rather fun to play. The PC Engine version or TurboGrafx port is up next, and this one turned out fantastic. While it is missing a lot of the large roadside objects and the scrolling is not quite as smooth, what is there is the playability. The graphics are excellent and do a great job at representing the arcade original. This features forked roads as well as the iconic music to boot. This is an excellent conversion of an excellent arcade game. Sega Arcade Gallery was released for the Game Boy Advance in 2003. This was a compilation of 4 classic Sega games including Afterburner, Space Harrier, Super Hang-On, and the only reason I bought this title was for Outrun. All of the conversions turned out good, but especially Outrun. Yes, everything runs at a lower resolution and there is not as much scenery on the side of the road, but the playability has been retained despite missing the analog controls. Everything else has been retained, especially the excellent music. Back in the day, when I was still just a young dumb hick from the sticks, I rather enjoyed the Amiga version. Looking at it now, it's amazing how something like this could get released. For starters, I never did understand that yellow border around the screen which totally distracts from the screen. I should be thankful though, as looking at the screen will send you into a pure raging frenzy. The game features choppy animation and a slow frame rate with graphics that barely resemble the arcade game. I don't know what the frame rate is, but it has to be in the low double digits. Even the music is not that good, and you would think it would be a slam dunk on the Amiga. The playability is also on the negative side, so there really isn't much going for this version aside from the rather goofy intro tune when the game first loads up. This conversion is why so many attempts have been made to resurrect this beloved franchise on the Amiga.
US Gold present from Sega.
The Atari ST version is very similar to the Amiga, although running quite a bit faster and, if you can believe it, better music. The same crappy controls found in the Amiga port are present here as well. Back in 2019, work was started on an improved version of Outrun for the Atari ST. This one runs much smoother and faster, although it still does feature the same graphics as found in the original US Gold port. However, the scrolling is so much smoother, but I'm not sure if it was ever finished. The Sega Saturn version was released and it's actually better than the arcade version. While it is virtually arcade perfect running on the standard 30 frames per second, there is an option that will allow it to run at 60 frames per second, making everything run oh so much smoother. The same iconic music is present and it controls great. The good old Commodore 64 received two slightly different releases. The original port was released in Europe and it was programmed by 17-year-old Martin Webb. He had approached US Gold with a demo of an Outrun clone with no idea that the company had just officially licensed the Sega coin-op. The company were so impressed with his work on the clone, they immediately signed him to do an official conversion of the arcade game. He was given a £20,000 upfront fee plus residuals on the back end, provided he could get the game completed by Christmas time of 1987. He was able to do just that. The game turned out pretty good, although the forking of the roads were not present and it's a multi-load. The game runs fast, but the scrolling is a bit on the choppy side. The colors are also drab, but there isn't a whole lot you can do about that. It does control fairly well. The USA version has a different title screen and the graphics are a bit more refined. It runs faster and it has an actual route selector so you don't have to reload a new game if you want to play a different route. Since this was just an enhanced version of the European version, it only took 2 weeks to complete. Playability and sound-wise, it's pretty much the same. The MS-DOS version was converted here in the States by Unlimited Software and not Probe. This version turned out really good with the full arcade presentation including the radio selector. However, there is no ad-lib support, so we only get PC speaker sound. But even still, I could listen to Magical Sound Shower on the PC all day long. Although the game only runs in EGA mode, the scrolling and animation is fairly smooth, especially for a 1990 game. The forked roads are present, although a lot of the giant roadside scenery are missing. It still plays good, although the collision detection isn't. There are times when you won't even come close to hitting a car, but the computer says otherwise. Overall, it's pretty good.
登場。
Next on the list is the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive version. This was published by Sega themselves and it turned out really good. Now granted, everything has been scaled back and the scrolling isn't quite as smooth, but the playability is there and so are the iconic tunes. The forks in the road are present and so are the peaks and valleys that you have to navigate. Little details such as the flag waver going crazy if you don't accelerate out of the starting gate are present, as well as the different endings. There is also an exclusive fourth song entitled Stepped On Beat. Overall, it looks and plays great.
Checkpoint.
Sticking with the Sega format for just a little bit longer, let's take a look at the Game Gear port. Typically, Game Gear versions are just ports of the Master System releases, but that's not the case with this one. This version turned out really good with lots of color and smooth scrolling and animation. Yes, most of the huge roadside objects are missing, but we still get forks in the road and that awesome Outrun music. The playability is also top-notch. The Dreamcast version is pretty close to being arcade perfect with a few changes. For starters, there is no Ferrari license in the game, so the car has been changed to some sort of off-brand. The 30 frames per second found in the arcade game is present, but sadly, the 60 frames per second option that was in the Saturn version is not. Everything else has been included, including the tight controls. Even the PlayStation received a 3D remake in the Sega Ages line. Rather than straight up do a port of the arcade game, everything has been redone in 3D polygon form. The game runs at 60 frames per second, so everything is silky smooth. There are a couple of extras such as an original track and a neon course, and you can change which of the 3 tunes you want to listen to at any time. The music is fantastic and the game controls well, utilizing both digital and analog controls. A rather excellent 3D port was done for the 3DS and it was brought to us by M2. I bought this game for my son and the 3D effect is absolutely phenomenal. The game offers some extras as well as including 60 frames per second gameplay, save states, and more. There is even a stage select. There were also versions released for various 3G mobile phones in Japan. I have never tried these, but the videos I came across make it look pretty good. The Atari XL line of computers also has a homebrew version of Outrun in development. So far it looks really good, although I'm not quite sure if it was ever completed. a Nintendo Switch version was also recently released. And there you have it, everybody. The comprehensive history of Outrun. Yes, I realize I did each video in the incorrect order, but at some point I will cover the other games as well. This game has had a long, storied history, and I found the little details and pieces of documentation fascinating. If you've never had the chance to put the pedal to the metal, all the while jamming out to Magical Sound Shower, be sure and give Outrun a shot. You won't be sad you did. Huge shout out and a big thank you to Mr. Suzuki himself for answering my questions. Also, big thanks to the website Time Extension, Indie Retro News, The Cutting Room Floor, Retro Gamer Magazine, and the fantastic Outrun 86 blog. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. If you would like to contribute but not sign up for my Patreon, you can always click the donate button up above. Thanks everyone for watching.